For thousands of years, we dwarves considered ourselves one people, swinging hammer or axe for the glory of our patrons, Durakar and Croth. We had carved out a kingdom in the frosty reaches of Balderstone, nestled in the shadow of Forgefire Mountain, beneath the unshakable stone of the snow-capped peaks. The halls sang with the chorus of anvils and pickaxes, the warmth of hearth and forge driving the chill from our bones. Along the windswept slopes, the whistle of the wind was only broken by the clangor of axe on shield as we drove those who would do us harm away from our halls and hills. The summer roads were crowded with cart and wagon, bearing refined ore and finished goods out of the mountains, and foodstuffs and provisions into them. We traded goods as far away as Keith and the Abrini kingdoms, and only dulled our blades on the skull of the occasional ogre or troll. In the winter, the roads closed, and we sang songs in the glow of the home fires, hoisting tankards of ale and mead in between journeys deeper into the mountain where the bones of our world hid its treasures. But all that changed with the gloaming. A dark blight covered the land like a choking fog, and the days were as nights. Something deep within the gloom beneath us emerged, and our way of life would never be the same. Legions born of the gloaming flooded our halls, while titans, skin like coal and breath like cinder, battered our keeps and homes on the wind-whipped slopes. Then, heaving like a great bear roused from its slumber, the very mountains themselves turned against us. In the wake of the sacrifice of King Nalgrim, during the eruption of Forgefire Mountain and the subsequent fall of Balderstone to the legions of the depths, a bitter rift opened between the dwarves that had dwelled in the bosom of the earth and the dwarves who had stood as sentinels in the world above. Seeking refuge in the gentler valleys of the Cron Mountains, many among our kin saw for themselves a new life, where the old bloodlines would be able to heal and the heritage of the dwarven people might strengthen once again. For many, life beneath the sun stung pride as much as it stung the eyes, but dwarves are a resilient people. But old wounds heal slow when the scars that remain mark the sting of a defeat that, for some, could not be salved. Those who still carried the burden of wounded pride and longed to return beneath the world from which we had come came to be known as the Stoneborn, reflecting the stories of Durakar, shaping us from the living rock. In all matters of dwarven affairs, these two factions inevitably stood on opposing sides of any given proposal or issue of concern to our people. For the Sunforged, we intended to make the best of our new situation, taking up hammer and pick to mine the crags of the Cron Mountains and refining the bounty from its tunnels as only our people know how. For the Stoneborn, however, all actions inevitably returned to the matter of reclamation of our homeland, back to the kingdom of the legendary Dolgrim's first founding. It mattered little that the evil that had driven us from our homes bred like sturges and outnumbered us 100 to 1, or that the devastation wrought to our homeland would be tantamount to rebuilding a mountain out of pebbles. But to the Stoneborn, pride ruled over prudence. In the aftershocks of the shadows that shed divine blood and buried great civilizations beneath salted waves, the Stoneborn did not relent in their stated purpose. As our human neighbors to the west worked to rebuild a shattered empire, we stood as solid as ever, unflinching in the face of an event that had silenced gods. When fiendish orcs emerged among them, crashing down from the slopes of the Kiln Mountains like waves of a reeking plague, we stood once more at the council to decide our stake in their conflict. Among the Sunforged, the answer was as obvious as the sun's glint on a mithril axe blade. We would join with the humans in pushing back the orcish horde. Such was not the decision to be reached by the Stoneborn. Through several days of debate, where the air filled with barbed curses, the Stoneborn decided then and there that the affairs of the surface dwellers were not a dwarven concern. They would instead depart and plan the reclamation of our surely devastated homeland in the north. Even as our hated enemies were marching their piggish faces towards our adopted home, the Stoneborn were marching in the opposite direction, indifferent to our plight. The many wars between the lands of men and the Orcish horde took a terrible toll on those who had remained to fly the banner of justice. In the end, all were driven from the war-torn lands. We among the Sunforged cannot help but feel that had the Stoneborn stood with us in solidarity, we might have emerged from the side of victory. The Stoneborn would splinter even further, eventually establishing two separate kingdoms, Bandur and Durnbor. Those of us amongst the Sunforged would continue our traditions of trade and travel, establishing strongholds and settlements from Othgard to Oradon. While the schism opened between our people has never fully mended, as time weaves its tapestry, wounds become scabs, and scabs become scars. The pain will eventually dull, and we are left only with that distant reminder. Quoth willing, our people will once again become whole.